The Fabelmans. This is a semi-autobiographical of a moment in time in a young Steven Spielberg's life. And here is the official synopsis. Growing up in post-World War II era Arizona, young Sammy Fabelman aspires to become a filmmaker as he reaches adolescence, but soon discovers a shattering family secret and explores how the power of films can help him see the truth. This film was, of course, directed by the prolific Steven Spielberg. And as I like to do here on the Spun Today Podcast, let's shout out the writers. Because without the writers, we have nada. And this film was co-written by Steven Spielberg and Tony Kushner. Big shout out to them. And I also want to shout out the cast. I had a great cast, starting with Michelle Williams, who played Steven Spielberg's mother. In the story, she's depicted as Mitzi Fabelman. She did an amazing job. I think I'm sure she'll be nominated for this movie. Paul Dano, which we got to see in this movie in a completely different light. He played the Riddler in last year's The Batman movie, which is the one where Robert Pattinson played Batman. But we see him in this film playing Bert Fabelman, which is Steven Spielberg's father. Seth Rogen, shout out to Seth Rogen. Fucking love Seth Rogen. Big shout out to him. He plays Benny Lowy, which is the father's best friend and co-worker. Gabriel LaBelle plays Sammy Fabelman, which is Steven Spielberg's character. He plays like the older teenage version. Then Mateo Zorian plays the younger Sammy Fabelman. And those are the main characters in the film. You have an honorable mention of Judd Hirsch, who plays Uncle Boris. He has like a few scene cameo, but definitely one memorable line that he has in one of his scenes, which I'm going to share with you guys in a bit. So the movie is very much a coming-of-age story of Steven Spielberg's life, and he explores the different dynamics of the relationships in his life. His relationship with his mother and his sisters, of which he had 3. His relationship with his father, the father's relationship with the mother, how he got introduced to filmmaking and how it became a passion for him, the way he assimilated with his peers and making friends and enemies as a result of moving around a lot due to the nature of his father's work, his relationship with religion and being Jewish at a time and in neighborhoods where he was definitely the minority. And I really enjoyed the vulnerability within all of those moments. So his father was a computer engineer, computer programmer, really respected and brilliant within his field. And because of that, worked for companies like GE, and then because of inventions and things that he engineered, was headhunted by IBM, and they wound up moving from Arizona to California, to like the Silicon Valley area, if I'm not mistaken. And prior to that, I don't remember if they moved from somewhere else to Arizona or just like moved around a bit within Arizona. We definitely got the sense of that picking up and leaving because the father was so driven by his work and what he was doing that it kind of came off as like a normal thing that the family would just pick up and leave whenever, dad's work said you had to. And the impacts of those moves and of those decisions to the rest of the family kind of seemed lost on him in a way. Even though from his perspective, he's taking on so much work and doing something that he very clearly enjoyed doing and loved and innovating within his space, but taking on more work and moving to where the work was and to having a bigger team and a more prestigious position and putting all that on his shoulders, from his perspective, was sacrifices that he was making for his family to be able to provide them a big house and things that he never had. And he had a very practical, learn a skill, work hard at it type of outlook on life, and he wanted that for his son. And the mother, on the flip side, she was very artistic. She played piano. In the movie, when Uncle Boris comes to visit, he says that she was so good that she could have been a concert pianist. And Steven Spielberg is obviously somewhat of a dreamer, if you want to call it that, and is beginning at this age, in his adolescence, to find his love and passion for film. So he has these like juxtaposed examples between his father, who's a computer engineer, programmer guy, very practical, do a trade, work hard, and provide for your family. And on the flip side, you have his mother, which is artistic, follow your heart, and actually has a dope line within the movie where she says, and it kind of foreshadows her resentment in a way towards the father, in my opinion, where she's telling Steven Spielberg's character that you do what your heart tells you have to do because you don't owe anyone your life. And to me, in a way, she's resentful of the fact that she gave up her dream of being a concert pianist to get married and have children and become a homemaker and kind of sort of go with the flow with wherever the father's career takes the family. And you get a sense of like the pain she felt for feeling that she had to do that. Then we have Seth Rogen's character, which is Benny Lowy, and he's a member of his father's team, of Burt Fabelman's team at work in Arizona, and a very close family friend, the father's best friend. All the kids call him Uncle Benny, so he's like always around. He's like the comedic relief of the movie. And we later find out that he's actually a lot closer to the mom than he is to the dad. Not funny, fucked up. But we find out that his mom, Mitzi Fabelman, is in love with the best friend, Benny. And Benny's in love with her. And they were having an affair for years. And Steven Spielberg's character finds this out because he is already at this point, into filmmaking and films and just like recording everything. He has this little camera that his father gets for him, because even though he always downplayed the whole movie thing and wanted his son to pursue a practical type of trade and living, he did support him in that way, but just was like condescending towards it. Like, here, this is for your hobby, and would always constantly call his filmmaking and love of art and stuff like that a hobby. But anyway, Steven Spielberg's character is always just like filming everything, and they took this like family vacation to a lake for camping, which Benny went on. And while he was editing the film from that trip, he started noticing things like in the background of stuff that he was filming. Like, he would be filming something with his sisters, but in the background he would see the mom and his dad's best friend holding hands off camera, kind of like gazing into each other's eyes and kind of flirty. And we as the viewers, we kind of see this throughout the film, where the mom laughs like extra hard at like Benny's jokes, kind of ignores the dad a bit. And then Steven Spielberg's character begins like acting out towards his mom after he realizes what's going on. And he edited that piece out of the film, which, by the way, the editing back then, it's like literal film. If you guys remember, I'm too young to remember video camera film, or I am old enough rather to remember camera film, photo camera film, just like physical film, like rolls and rolls of film that he would edit by literally cutting with a scissor and splicing them together afterwards. So like cutting out pieces, putting in other pieces. There's actually this really cool scene with it where his father kind of like appreciates his ingenuity. I know I'm going a bit off topic real quick, but his father appreciates his ingenuity because he created this film with his friends it's like a war movie. It's called Escape to Nowhere. And he films the movie with a bunch of his friends in Arizona, and he's like in the Boy Scouts. So they have like a little movie premiere. He invites his parents to it. And then the movies, they're silent back then, right? There's just like he would play music in the background, like a little radio tape deck player, to go along with what you see projected on the screen. And what's really cool is that he has like gun shooting scenes, and you see him coming up with this while he's filming. He's like, damn, it looks too fake, while he's editing rather. But then in the premiere, they look like real gunshots, and like everybody's like, whoa, this shit looks like so real. That's crazy. And his father kind of looks at him like, how the heck did you do that? That's amazing. Like with genuine pride for his son. And then on the drive home, his father asks him about it, and he tells him that he poked holes in the film, so the light at the moment where the gun fires, the light like shines through that much more. So like on the screen when it's projecting, it looks like a pop, like a burst of light. So it looks like the guns are actually like going off. And the father kind of bonds with him in that moment. He's like, oh, what you do is very similar to what I do in engineering, where you're confronted with a problem and you figure out a solution for it. So I thought that was like a pretty dope moment between them two. And kind of like the opposite of what you normally see of this like hesitant kind of support for the hobby of your child, while failing to see that it's something that they're super passionate about and want to devote their lives to. But yeah, so going back to the story with the mom and him acting out towards her and, editing this film, he edits out the pieces where Uncle Benny and his mom were clearly, something was going on between the two. So, he can show the film to the whole family and everybody can look back on their trip together. But he holds on to this footage of the mom and Uncle Benny. And, the mom is confronting him about, why the hell have you been acting out lately? They have this argument and he just shows her the film and then she breaks down crying. They have this kind of intimate, vulnerable moment. And he tells him that he's not going to tell his father. And he, for some reason, apologizes to the mom. I guess feeling, that he exposed her and hurt her in that moment. And he lives with the secret for a long time until in the movie, they ultimately divorce, the parents. And the father, who's always, very career oriented, very into his work. But at home, it was more like whatever the mom said goes, aside from, the picking up and leaving and moving and stuff like that, which was, again, driven by his father's career choices. And I wonder how much of that is a product of him just being so into his work that he's kind of yeah, whatever, you and the kids, whatever, not paying mind to that, versus how much of that was just him playing second fiddle, if you will, to the mom. And it was so much so that even after, and this is the way it's depicted in the film, and I'll tell you guys how it really went down in real life, according to Steven Spielberg himself. But even after and during the divorce, the father took the blame for it in the eyes of the kids, saying that, it's because of work and it was his decision and stuff like that, so that they wouldn't be upset with the mother. And ultimately, she moves back to Arizona with the friend, Uncle Benny. And in the movie, it seemed like Steven Spielberg stayed with the dad in California because that's, where he was applying for colleges, or he had already started going to college and trying to do jobs in filmmaking, break into the industry and stuff like that. And then his sisters left with the mom back to Arizona. I believe that's how it went in the movie. Now, in real life, it was very, very close to that. This is based on the Fresh Air podcast with Terry Gross when Steven Spielberg was on there, and he was sharing a lot of his experiences. And he mentioned how when they broke up, his father did do, take the blame for what was going on, but that he really resented his father for doing so because he knew that it was the mother's fault. And the father also knew of the mother's relationship with Benny, the best friend at this point. And Steven Spielberg, felt like his father was being weak in that and really resented his dad for it. And because of that, caused a real disconnect in their relationship that lasted almost 15 years. And he said, he would still speak to his father, but on his birthday, holidays, stuff like that, he really had no close relationship with his dad for 15 years because he let that resentment towards the way his father handled that moment and kind of let his mom off the hook, I guess, the way he handled that, which to me seems like maybe that was his. It almost seemed like he was projecting how angry he was at the way that he handled knowing and harboring that secret for years that his mother had, and how he was upset with himself for not doing something, and then seeing that his father was kind of sort of not doing something about it either, and just divorced her and let her go be with his best friend, or quote unquote let her, because it's not up to him at that point, right? But maybe his emotional disconnect from his dad was a projection of how he felt that he himself didn't do enough in the moment of the situation. And what kid could and what kid should, even harbor a secret like that? But I thought that was an interesting and important distinction between how it went down in real life versus the movie. And now just a couple of lines of dialogue that I'd be remiss if I didn't share that I wanted to share with you fine folks, which is one thing that his father told him multiple times throughout the movie, but definitely stood out in one scene in particular. He tells him, quote, "You can't just love something. You have to take care of them, right?" And I thought that was an important and true takeaway that relates to relationships or just things in general that you do, that you enjoy doing. You can't just love writing and podcasting. You have to take care of it. You have to pay attention to it. You have to dedicate time to it, etc. Uncle Boris, played by Judd Hirsch, in a scene tells a young Steven Spielberg who is struggling with his love of art and balancing that with his love for his family. Tells him that, quote, "Art will give you crowns in heaven and laurels on earth, but it'll tear your heart out and leave you lonely. Describing a bit there the ultimate artist struggle. And lastly, there was this really funny scene where he gets invited to this girl's house who's a Christian Jesus freak is the best way I could describe her. And he's obviously Jewish, but they're hanging out in her room and she has like the shrine of a bunch of, crosses and photos of Jesus. And he's just like sort of psyched out to even be there. He's having a tough time assimilating to this new high school and a way of life that kids in California seem to have. So he's kind of sort of yesing her to death and just going with the flow. And ultimately she starts kissing him, and then they go into bed and they're making out a bit, but he's eyes open and looking up, and there's this huge cross of Jesus above her bed, and Jesus is just like staring down at him. But he continues on kissing her, and I just thought that was a funny scene. Probably hearing it secondhand on audio doesn't do it justice, but just take my word for it. It'll be funny if you guys watch it. And that, folks, is my little recap and review of The Fabelmans. I highly recommend and think you should check it out.